The afternoon sun was blazing, turning the streets into rivers of heat. People hurried past each other, eyes squinting, faces tired. It was the kind of day when everyone just wanted to get home as quickly as possible. Among them was a young woman named Aisha. She carried a small bag on her shoulder and a bottle of water that was almost empty. Her office had just closed early because of the unbearable weather, and she was walking toward the bus stop. As she walked, she noticed an old man sitting near a broken wall by the roadside. His clothes were worn out, his hair was gray and tangled, and he looked exhausted. His head was bowed, and his hands rested weakly on his knees. People walked by without paying attention. Some looked at him briefly and then turned away, pretending not to see. A few even stepped aside as if they were afraid of catching something from him. Aisha slowed down. She didn't know why, but something about the man caught her attention. Maybe it was the way he sat so quietly while everyone else rushed around. Maybe it was the sadness in his face or the way his hands trembled as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. She hesitated for a moment, then reached for her bag. Her bottle still had a little water left. Without thinking too much, she walked toward him. "Uncle, would you like some water?" she asked softly. The old man looked up slowly, as if waking from a long dream. His eyes were tired but kind. For a second he seemed unsure whether she was really talking to him. Then he gave a small nod. Aisha opened the bottle and handed it to him. His hands shook slightly as he took it, and he lifted it to his lips. He drank slowly, almost carefully, as if he didn't want to waste a single drop. "Thank you, child," he whispered. His voice was rough and dry, like someone who hadn't spoken much in days. "May God bless you," Aisha smiled. "It's nothing, Uncle. The heat is terrible today. You should try to stay in the shade." He nodded again, still holding the bottle. There was a faint smile on his lips now, the kind that hides years of pain behind it. For a moment she thought of her own grandfather, who used to sit in the courtyard every afternoon, praying under the shade of an old tree. There was something in this man's eyes that reminded her of him, calm yet filled with stories untold. The street was busy, horns honking, people shouting, buses screeching to a stop. But around them, for that short moment, it felt quiet. The air seemed to slow down. Aisha stood there awkwardly, unsure whether to leave or stay. She didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable, but she also didn't want to walk away yet. After a few seconds, the old man said, "You're kind, my child. Not many stop to help anymore. Everyone is in a hurry these days." Aisha nodded. "People are just tired, I think. Life's not easy." He looked at her for a moment as if studying her face. Then he gave a small, understanding smile. "No, it's not. But kindness makes it lighter. I used to say that to my students once." "Your students?" she asked, surprised. He chuckled softly. "A long time ago. I used to teach." That caught her attention. "You were a teacher?" she asked. "What did you teach?" "English," he replied slowly. "And sometimes life lessons, though not everyone wanted those." She smiled. "You must have been good at it." He looked down, lost in thought. "Maybe once. Life had different plans for me later." Aisha didn't push. She didn't want to seem nosy. She just stood quietly beside him as the hot wind blew dust around their feet. The city was loud again, but his calm voice had left a strange peace inside her. A few minutes later, she checked the time. Her bus would arrive soon. She hesitated before speaking. "Uncle, would you like me to bring you some food? I can get something from that stall over there." The old man shook his head gently. "No, child, you've done enough." "I'll be fine. Are you sure?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Yes, just your kindness is more than enough for today." She didn't know what else to say. She gave him a small nod and turned to leave. As she walked away, she heard a faint sound behind her. The man's voice, low and trembling, whispering words that made her stop in her tracks. It was a short prayer, one she knew too well. It was the same prayer her father used to say every night before bed when she was a child. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned around slowly and stared at him. The old man was still sitting in the same position, eyes closed, whispering the words quietly. A strange feeling spread through her chest, something between warmth and confusion. She hadn't heard that prayer in years, not since her father passed away. And yet here in the middle of a noisy street, a stranger was saying it word for word. She walked back a few steps. "Uncle," she said carefully, "where did you learn that prayer?" The man opened his eyes and looked at her, surprised. "That prayer? Oh, I've known it for many years. I used to say it for someone dear." "Someone dear?" she repeated softly. He nodded slowly. "Yes, my son. I used to say it every night for him." But that was a long, long time ago. Aisha felt a chill run through her despite the heat. She didn't know why, but something deep inside her told her this was not a coincidence. She wanted to ask more, but she hesitated. It felt too personal. The old man looked fragile, and she didn't want to make him sad. Still, the thought wouldn't leave her mind. The same prayer, the same tone, the same gentle rhythm her father used to have. Before she could ask again, her bus arrived, honking loudly. She looked at the old man, unsure. "I have to go now, Uncle," she said quietly. "I'll see you again, maybe," he smiled softly. "God willing, child." She nodded and got on the bus. As it moved away, she looked back through the window. The old man was still sitting there, holding the empty bottle in his hand, staring into the distance. The sunlight fell across his face, highlighting the deep lines that told a lifetime of struggle. The ride home felt longer than usual. Her thoughts kept circling back to that prayer. How could he know it exactly? Her father used to tell her that it was something his own father had taught him. But she had never met her grandfather. Her father never spoke much about him. He had only once said that they lost contact when he was young after a family argument. Since then, her grandfather had disappeared, and no one ever heard from him again. Aisha shook her head. It couldn't be, she told herself. There must be many people who know the same prayer. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Still, something about the man's voice stayed with her. It had the same gentle warmth, the same pause between certain words, just like her father's. That night, she couldn't sleep easily. The image of the old man sitting under the sun, his tired eyes and that familiar prayer kept returning to her mind. She felt a strange pull, as if her heart wanted to go back there and talk to him again. She didn't know why, but it felt important, like there was something unfinished between them. The next morning, she decided she would go see him again. She packed an extra lunch and filled a fresh bottle of water. Before leaving, her mother asked, "Why are you carrying 2 lunchboxes today?" Aisha smiled faintly. "Just for someone who might need it." Her mother nodded, not asking more. She walked out of the house, her thoughts heavy but calm. The sun wasn't as strong yet, and the streets were quieter. As she neared the place where she'd seen him, her heart started beating faster. She didn't know if he'd still be there. Maybe he had moved on, or maybe it had all just been a strange coincidence. But deep inside, something told her this story wasn't over yet. The next morning came with soft sunlight and a cool breeze that carried the smell of fresh bread from the bakery near the corner. Aisha woke up early, feeling more restless than usual. She tried to go about her routine as always, but her thoughts were stuck on that old man she had met the day before. His eyes, his prayer, his quiet smile, all of it had stayed with her overnight like a song she couldn't get out of her head. She kept asking herself if she should go back to see him. It felt strange to care so much about someone she had only met once, but something about him felt familiar, almost as if she had known him long ago. She couldn't explain why, but she felt that there was more to his story than what she saw on the surface. After breakfast, she packed her lunchbox and filled 2 bottles of water instead of 1. She told herself it was just in case she saw someone in need again. But deep down, she knew exactly who she hoped to find. When she reached the spot near the broken wall, the street was already alive with morning noise. Vendors were opening their stalls. Buses honked impatiently and people hurried by with sleepy faces. Aisha looked around, scanning the sidewalk. Her heart sank a little when she didn't see him. The place looked empty. The spot where he had sat yesterday was bare except for a few dry leaves. She stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. Maybe he had moved somewhere else. Or maybe he was never meant to be seen again. Just as she was about to turn back, she noticed a shadow in the corner near an old tea stall. The same frail figure was sitting there, this time leaning against a wooden pole. Relief washed over her. She quickly walked toward him. "Uncle," she called softly. He looked up, surprised, but when he recognized her face, his expression softened into a smile. "Ah, it's you again," he said. "You didn't have to come back." "I was passing by," she lied gently, sitting down on the low wall beside him. "I thought you might be here." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "People usually forget quickly, but you remember. That's rare." "I just wanted to check if you were okay," she said. "It was really hot yesterday." He nodded. "It was, but I'm used to it. Heat, rain, cold. It's all the same when you've lived long enough outside." Aisha handed him a bottle of water and the small lunchbox she had brought. Here, you didn't eat much yesterday. Please have some. The old man looked at the box as if it were a precious gift. You shouldn't trouble yourself, child, he said quietly. But thank you. It's not trouble, she replied with a smile. You remind me of someone. He looked at her curiously. Who? My father, she said softly. He used to pray the same words you said yesterday. The man's eyes widened slightly. He looked away for a moment as if trying to hide something. Your father sounds like a good man. He was, she said. He passed away a few years ago. But the way you said that prayer, it felt like he was speaking again through you. The old man was silent for a while. Then in a low voice he said, that prayer, it was something I used to say for my son. I've said it for many years, even after I lost him. I never stopped. Aisha's fingers tightened around the edge of her scarf. You lost your son? He nodded slowly. Yes, he was very young when I last saw him. We had a misunderstanding in the family. I left home one night after an argument and never went back. I thought I'd return when things calmed down. But life has its own plans. By the time I wanted to fix things, it was too late. The world had changed. The people I loved were gone or had moved on. Aisha felt a lump forming in her throat. You never tried to find them? He gave a weak smile. I did. But time can be cruel. Addresses change, faces fade. Sometimes you search for people who don't want to be found. And sometimes you don't even know where to begin. She didn't know what to say. She looked at him and wondered what kind of pain he must have carried all these years. His wrinkled hands trembled as he opened the lunchbox. Inside were 2 pieces of bread and a few vegetables. He ate slowly with gratitude in every bite, like someone who had learned to value even the smallest kindness. They sat in silence for a while. Around them, life moved on. People laughing, cars honking, children running after a ball. But in that little corner, time felt still. After a few minutes, Aisha asked, Where are you from, Uncle? He looked into the distance as if searching his memory. A small village near the river. It used to be peaceful. I lived there with my wife and son. My wife passed away early. After that, my son was all I had. He paused for a moment, his voice softening. He wanted to study, to make something of himself. I was proud of him. But I was also stubborn. I didn't listen when I should have. We had a fight the night I left. He was only in his 20s then. Aisha's chest tightened. What was his name? She asked carefully. The man looked down, his eyes misty. Rashid, he whispered. Aisha froze. The name hit her like a wave. Her father's name was Rashid. She stared at the man, her mind spinning. Could it be? No, it couldn't. There must be many people with that name. Still, the uneasiness grew inside her. She wanted to ask more, but fear held her back. What if she was wrong? What if she gave him false hope? So she stayed quiet, pretending to adjust her scarf. The old man noticed her silence and smiled gently. You remind me of my grandson, he said suddenly. I've never met him, but I used to imagine what he'd be like. Maybe like you, kind, thoughtful. Her heart skipped a beat. You never met your grandson? He shook his head. No, I don't even know if he's alive. I lost touch with my son long ago. Sometimes I wonder if life would give me one last chance to see him again before I leave this world. Aisha's throat felt dry. She didn't trust herself to speak. Everything inside her screamed that this wasn't a coincidence. But she didn't know how to ask the question that could change everything. After a moment, she said softly, If you ever met him again, what would you say? He sighed deeply. I'd tell him I was sorry. That pride means nothing when love is lost. I'd tell him I never stopped praying for him, not even for a single day. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. But some things are too late to fix. Aisha felt her eyes sting. It's never too late, she whispered. He looked at her with a faint smile. Maybe not for you, child. You still have time. A long silence followed. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of rain from somewhere far away. The old man finished his meal and folded his hands as if in prayer. I should go, he said quietly. Thank you for the food and the water. You've given me more than you know. Will you be here tomorrow? She asked quickly. He paused, thinking. If I'm meant to be, yes. Aisha nodded, trying to hide her worry. She didn't want him to disappear again. Something deep inside her told her that her father's unfinished story might somehow be connected to this man's journey. She didn't have proof yet, but the feeling wouldn't go away. She watched as he walked slowly down the road, his figure bending slightly under the weight of years, until he disappeared into the crowd. That evening, When she reached home, she sat silently at the dinner table. Her mother noticed her distraction. "You're quiet today. Is everything okay?" Aisha hesitated. "I met someone today. An old man, he reminds me of Abba." Her mother's spoon stopped midway. "Reminds you how?" Aisha took a deep breath. "He said the same prayer Abba used to say. He even said he had a son named Rashid, and he said he left home many years ago after a fight." Her mother's face went pale. She set her spoon down slowly. "What did you say?" "I didn't tell him anything," Aisha replied quickly. "I wasn't sure. I didn't want to make a mistake." "But what if it's true? What if he's—" Her mother's eyes filled with tears before Aisha could finish. "Your grandfather," she whispered. "We searched for him for years." The room went quiet. Aisha felt a shiver run down her spine. The old man's face flashed in her mind. The same gentle eyes, the same voice that had somehow felt like home. Her mother reached out and took her hand. "If it's really him, we can't let him live like that. We have to bring him home." Aisha nodded slowly. Her heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from hope. That night she couldn't sleep again. Only this time it wasn't confusion that kept her awake. It was the thought that maybe fate had brought her to him for a reason. And tomorrow she would know for sure. The next morning Aisha woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that she had never felt before. Last night's conversation with her mother had left her restless. The old man she had met, the one who spoke the same prayer her father once said, might really be her grandfather. The thought was both thrilling and overwhelming. Could it really be true? After all these years of wondering, searching, and feeling incomplete, maybe fate had finally given her a chance to meet him. She got ready quickly, her mind racing with questions. What would she say to him? How would she even start the conversation without startling him? And what if he didn't remember anything, or didn't recognize her? Her stomach twisted in knots at the possibilities. Despite her worry, she knew she had to go. She couldn't let this moment pass. Aisha packed 2 bottles of water, a fresh lunch, and a small handkerchief. She wanted to be prepared, but she also wanted to be gentle and patient. This wasn't just about food or water. It was about trust and care. Stepping out into the quiet morning, she walked toward the same street where she had seen him before. The sun was soft, not as harsh as the day before, and the air smelled faintly of earth and baked bread from nearby stalls. When she reached the spot, she saw him almost immediately. The old man was sitting under the same wooden pole, his thin frame bent slightly forward. He looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way that tugged at her heart. But the moment he saw her, his eyes lit up, just as they had the day before. "You came back," he said, a gentle smile spreading across his worn face. "I promised yesterday," she replied softly, sitting beside him. "I brought something for you." She handed him the bottle and the lunchbox. He accepted them with a faint nod. "You are very kind," he said. "More kind than I deserve." Aisha felt a strange warmth inside her. She could see how much he had suffered, how lonely he must have been for years. She wanted to do more than just feed him. She wanted to connect, to bridge the gap of lost time. "Uncle," she said carefully, "can I ask you something personal?" He looked at her, a hint of curiosity in his tired eyes. "Of course, child. You can ask anything." "Yesterday you mentioned a son named Rashid," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "My father's name was Rashid. He passed away a few years ago." The old man's eyes widened and he leaned back slightly as if the weight of her words struck him. For a long moment he didn't speak. His hands shook slightly, resting on his knees, and he stared at the ground as if trying to remember something he had buried long ago. "My son," he whispered finally, almost to himself. "Rashid," his voice cracked. "He had a wife and a daughter. They were the only family I had left after she died. I never thought I would see them again." Aisha's heart raced. "I'm his daughter," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm your granddaughter." The old man blinked rapidly as if trying to understand her words. He looked at her face, then at her hands, then back at her face. Slowly, recognition dawned in his eyes. "No, it can't be," he murmured. His voice shook and his lips quivered as he reached out to touch her hand. You're really her?" Aisha nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, it's me." For a moment he couldn't speak. He just stared at her, his eyes wide, filled with disbelief, shock, and an overwhelming flood of emotions. Then suddenly he pulled her into a weak but desperate embrace. She felt his frail body trembling against hers, and she wrapped her arms around him as tightly as she could. It was a moment of connection that had been decades in the making, a reunion that neither had imagined could ever happen. After a few moments, he pulled back slightly, holding her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. I thought I lost you all forever," he whispered. "I thought I would never see my son's family again. And now you're here. You're really here." Aisha shook her head gently, trying to calm him. "I never knew you, Uncle, but I've always wondered about you. I've always wanted to know what happened to you." He sighed deeply, a mixture of relief and sorrow in his voice. "It's a long story, child. I left when your father was young after a terrible fight. I was angry, stubborn. I thought I was protecting him, but I only hurt him. I didn't realize how much damage I was causing. And then the years passed. Life went on without me. I never knew if he forgave me. I never knew if I would see you all again." Aisha's eyes filled with tears as she listened. "We didn't know where you were. My father, he never talked about you much. He was hurt and he missed you, but he didn't want to keep searching. He thought maybe one day we'd find you, but he never imagined we would." The old man's face crumpled with sorrow. "I should have come back sooner," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have fixed everything. But I was weak and I was afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of being too late." "You're not too late," Aisha said firmly. "We're here now. That's what matters." He took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment. Then slowly he opened them and smiled faintly, a tear slipping down his cheek. Yes, it does matter. You're here. You're alive. And I see my son in you." Aisha felt a lump in her throat. She had always longed for this moment, for some connection to the family she barely knew. Now here it was, fragile but real. She held his hands in hers, feeling the thin, rough skin that told stories of struggle and time. "We can start over," she whispered. "We can make up for lost time together." He nodded slowly, a small smile forming. "I'd like that, more than anything." For the next few hours they sat together talking softly. He told her about his life after leaving home. The hard days on the streets, the lonely nights, the small joys and the immense pain. Aisha listened, asking questions gently, trying not to overwhelm him but wanting to understand everything he had been through. She learned that after leaving the village, he had wandered from city to city, doing odd jobs, teaching when he could, sometimes begging when he had no choice. The years had been harsh, but he had survived. And in every night of loneliness, he had said that same prayer, hoping for a miracle, hoping to see his family again. Aisha shared her own memories too, about her father, about her childhood, about the longing she had felt for someone who could tell her about her roots. They laughed softly at small coincidences, like how her father loved to read poetry, and he had once done the same with Rashid when he was a child. They cried together too, letting years of pain flow into each other without words. By the afternoon, people around the street started to notice them. The old man, once invisible to the world, now sitting with a young woman who looked so much like her father. But for Aisha, none of it mattered. She was focused entirely on the man in front of her, the man who had been part of her family all along, lost and now found. When it was time to leave, he didn't want her to go. "Come back tomorrow," he said, almost pleading. "Please, I want to hear more. I want to know everything about you, about your father." "I will," she promised. "I'll be back. And next time we can take our time. No rush." As she walked away, she turned for one last look. He was sitting under the pole, his head lifted, watching her leave. There was a light in his eyes she hadn't seen before. A hope, a warmth, a life that had been dormant for too long. On her way home, Aisha felt a strange calm settle over her. The uncertainty, the longing, the loneliness, it was still there, but it had a new shape now. It was filled with possibility, with love, with the chance to rebuild what was lost. She knew this was just the beginning. The story wasn't over. They had all the time they needed to mend, to learn, to share, to heal. That night she told her mother everything that had happened, recounting every word, every gesture, every tear and smile. Her mother wept softly, holding her hands, feeling a relief she hadn't known she would ever feel. They prayed together quietly, thanking fate for this unexpected reunion. Aisha went to bed that night with her heart full, but also with questions buzzing in her mind. How had life led him to the streets? Why had he chosen to stay hidden for so long? And most importantly, what other stories did he have to tell? She fell asleep thinking about the next day, eager to go back, eager to learn more, eager to be with the grandfather she had never imagined she would meet. And somewhere across the city, the old man sat by the window of the small shelter where he had stayed the night, thinking of his granddaughter, smiling through his tears, and feeling a hope he hadn't felt in decades. The world felt bigger and warmer now, full of second chances and new beginnings. The following morning, Aisha woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness she had never felt before. Last night's conversation with her mother had replayed in her mind over and over. The possibility that the old man she had met was really her grandfather. She remembered every detail of the previous days. The worn clothes, the trembling hands, the soft prayer, the faint smile that hid decades of pain. She couldn't wait to see him again, to know more, and to confirm the truth that had been only whispered between them so far. She packed carefully this time, bringing food, water, and a small blanket. She also carried a notebook with memories of her father and her own life, thinking it might help the old man recognize her, or at least feel closer to the family he had lost. She walked to the street with a sense of purpose, feeling the soft morning sun on her face and hoping that this day would change everything. When she reached the spot, she saw him almost immediately. He was sitting under the same wooden pole as if he had been waiting for her. His posture was slumped, his head bowed. But the moment he saw her, his eyes lit up with recognition and hope. "You came back," he said, his voice slightly trembling. "I promised," she replied softly. "I wanted to bring you more food and I wanted to talk." She handed him the lunchbox and water bottle. He accepted them with a faint smile and looked at her as if she were a vision he had been dreaming about for decades. After a few moments of quiet, she gathered her courage. "Uncle," she began carefully, "there's something I need to ask. I think you are my grandfather. My father Rashid was your son." The old man froze. His hand shook as he took the water bottle from her. He stared at her, and for a moment nothing moved around them. The sounds of the street, the buses, the vendors, the people walking by, faded into the background. His eyes filled with tears, and he slowly raised his hand to touch her face. You are his daughter?" he whispered, barely able to speak. You are really here?" Aisha nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, it's me. I am his daughter. I am your granddaughter." For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just stared at her, his eyes wide, filled with disbelief and a deep aching joy. Then slowly, realization dawned. His body trembled as he reached out to hold her hands. "All these years, I thought I would never see you. I thought I had lost everything. And now you're here. You're really here." Aisha could feel his frail hands shaking. She squeezed them gently, holding on to him. "We're here now," she whispered. "We can start again." He pulled her into an embrace, weak but desperate, holding her close. It felt like all the years of separation, all the missed birthdays, all the lost moments were pouring into this single hug. She wrapped her arms around him tightly, feeling the warmth of family she had never known. After a few minutes, he pulled back slightly, holding her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. I can't believe it. You're here. After all these years, you're really here." "Yes," she said softly. "I'm here. I've always wondered about you. I've always wanted to know who you were, what happened to you. And now I know. You're my grandfather." His lips quivered as tears fell down his cheeks. "I left when your father was young. I was angry, stubborn, and foolish. I thought I was protecting him, but I only hurt him. I left him, and then I lost track of everything. And everyone I loved. I thought I had ruined everything forever." "You didn't ruin everything," Aisha said. "You're here now. That's what matters. We can be together, and we can make up for lost time." He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in her words, letting them sink into his heart. Then he opened them and looked at her with a faint smile, the first real smile she had seen on his face in days. Yes, it matters. You're here. You're alive, and I see my son in you." For hours they sat together under the sun, talking quietly. He told her about his life after leaving home. The hard years on the streets, the nights he spent alone, the small joys and tiny victories that kept him going. He spoke about the loneliness, the pain, and the endless hope that one day he might see his family again. Aisha listened intently, asking questions carefully, trying not to overwhelm him but wanting to understand everything he had been through. She learned that after leaving the village, he had wandered from city to city, teaching, begging, and working small jobs to survive. Every night he had whispered the same prayer, hoping to see his son's family again. She shared stories of her father, his love for her, and the longing they had both felt for a family member who had vanished. She told him about her childhood, the memories of her father's smile, and the way she had always wished to know her grandfather. They laughed softly at small coincidences, like how her father had loved poetry and how he, too, had shared poems with Rashid when he was a boy. They cried together, letting the years of pain flow into each other without words. It was as if decades of separation were melting away, replaced by understanding, love, and hope. As the afternoon wore on, Aisha realized that the world around them was continuing. But for her and her grandfather, time had slowed. This was a sacred moment, one they both had longed for without knowing it. People passing by may have seen just an old man and a young woman, but to them it was the reunion of a lifetime. Eventually, he looked at her with a question in his eyes. Do you remember anything from your father about me? Did he ever speak of me? Aisha nodded. He didn't speak much. He was hurt, but he loved you. He hoped one day he could find you, but he never knew how. He thought maybe life had separated us forever. The old man's face crumpled with sorrow. I should have come back sooner. I should have fixed everything. But fear held me back. Fear of rejection, fear that it was too late. I never imagined that fate would bring you to me like this. You didn't fail, she said softly. You're here now, and that's what matters. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he held her hands tightly. You have no idea. No idea what it means to see you. To know that I still have family. That I haven't lost everything. I was afraid I would die alone, but now, he looked up at the sky as if thanking something unseen. Now I feel alive again. Now I have hope. Aisha squeezed his hands. We'll take our time. We'll make memories, share stories, and be a family. It's not too late. He smiled, the weight of years lifting slightly from his shoulders. Yes, it's not too late. I want to hear everything about your father, about your life. I want to make up for the years lost. The day passed quietly, filled with stories, laughter, and tears. They walked slowly along the street, stopping at a small park where children were playing. He watched them with a mixture of nostalgia and joy, and Aisha felt her heart swell at the sight of him reconnecting with the world around him. By evening, they returned to the place where she had first met him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The warmth of the day was fading, but the warmth in their hearts remained. Tomorrow, he said softly, I want to go home. I want to see the house where I lost my family. To walk through it with you. I want to face the past finally with someone I can trust. Aisha nodded. We'll go together. You won't be alone anymore. As she left that evening, she felt a deep sense of peace. For the first time, she didn't feel the emptiness that had followed her all her life. Her grandfather was alive, and she had found him. The family that had been lost to time and pride was beginning to reunite, slowly but surely. That night, Aisha told her mother everything. Her mother wept, holding her hands, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. Together, they prayed quietly, thanking fate for this unexpected reunion and for the chance to heal wounds that had lingered for decades. Aisha went to bed with a heart full of hope. Tomorrow, she thought, would be another day of discovery, connection, and love. And this time, she knew, the story would not be of loss or separation. It would be of family, forgiveness, and second chances. Somewhere in a quiet corner of the city, the old man sat alone for a few moments before going to his small shelter. He stared at the night sky and whispered words of gratitude. After years of wandering and waiting, he had found his family, and for the first time in decades, he felt whole again. The next morning, Aisha woke up feeling a sense of anticipation she had never felt before. Today would be the day she would take her grandfather home, the man who had lived in the shadows for decades, carrying the weight of loss and separation. She packed carefully, food, water, and a small bag with some essentials. Her mother, too, had insisted on bringing a few things, worried that he would feel uncomfortable or unprepared for the day ahead. When Aisha reached the street where she had first met him, she found him sitting under the wooden pole, just as he had been every day since their reunion. His frail body looked smaller than before, but there was a spark in his eyes, a light that had returned after so many years of darkness. He smiled weakly when he saw her. "You're here," he said softly. Yes, Aisha replied. We're going home today. Don't worry, I'll be with you the entire way. He nodded slowly, taking her hand. I've waited so long for this day, he said, his voice trembling. I never imagined I would walk back into my own life after so many years. They started walking slowly toward her home, moving carefully through the crowded streets. People around them seemed oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding on the sidewalk. To the world, it was just a young woman helping an elderly man. But to Aisha and her grandfather, every step was a step toward healing. Along the way, he asked questions, his voice filled with curiosity and wonder. What was your father like? He asked. Tell me everything. I want to know how he grew up, what he dreamed of, what made him laugh. Aisha smiled, happy to answer. He was kind, patient, and loved teaching others. He always tried to do the right thing even when it was hard. He loved stories and he loved family. He missed you. A lot. The old man's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe I left him alone. I was foolish, proud, and blind to everything that mattered. But I'm seeing you now. It's like a chance to heal some of that pain. When they finally reached Aisha's home, her mother was waiting at the gate. The moment she saw the old man, tears filled her eyes. She had imagined this day countless times but never thought it would really happen. Without a word, she ran toward him and embraced him tightly. For a moment, the three of them stood together, holding each other, letting years of grief, loneliness, and longing pour out in silence. Mother, the old man whispered, his voice breaking. It's me, your father. Her mother pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. Is it really you? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Yes, he said. It's really me. I never thought I would see you again. They walked inside together, the house filled with an energy it hadn't known for years. Rooms that had felt empty and quiet were suddenly alive with the sound of laughter, tears, and soft conversations. Aisha's mother showed him the small garden, the living room where he used to spend time, and even the old photographs that had been tucked away in drawers for decades. He looked at the pictures with a mixture of awe and disbelief. I remember these faces, he whispered. I remember the laughter, the joy. I remember everything I lost. Aisha guided him to a chair by the window, where sunlight streamed in. She had made a small meal for him, something simple but comforting. As he ate, he looked around the house, taking in every detail, every familiar object. It was as if he was rediscovering a world he had been missing for far too long. After the meal, they sat together, sharing stories and memories. He wanted to hear everything about her father, about her childhood, and about life after he had disappeared. Aisha told him about her father's kindness, his struggles, his hopes, and the love he had carried for the family he had lost. Her mother added her own memories, filling in details that Aisha had never known. For hours, they laughed and cried, sometimes quietly, sometimes openly, as they rebuilt the family connections that had been broken for decades. Every story, every memory, every shared smile seemed to stitch together the gaps that time and distance had created. As evening approached, Aisha noticed that her grandfather looked tired. His frail body had been through a lot, but his spirit seemed lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. She helped him to the bedroom, making sure he was comfortable and settled. He looked around the room with gentle wonder, seeing familiar surroundings that felt both strange and comforting at the same time. Thank you, he said softly. Thank you for bringing me back home, for giving me a chance to be part of this family again. You don't have to thank me, Aisha replied. We're family. You belong here. He nodded, closing his eyes for a moment. I never thought I would feel this peace again. All these years I carried regret and loneliness, but now I feel whole. I feel alive. That night, Aisha stayed in the living room for a while, listening to the old man sleep in the next room. She thought about how a simple act of kindness, a bottle of water, a moment of attention, had led to this reunion. She thought about how small choices could change lives in ways we could never imagine, and she felt grateful that she had stopped, that she had offered him water that hot day, because it had led to finding her grandfather, her family, and a piece of her own heart she didn't even know was missing. Over the next few days, the family settled into a new routine. The old man regained some strength, helped by the love and care surrounding him. They spent mornings in the garden, afternoons talking about the past, and evenings sharing meals and laughter. Aisha's mother and grandfather often sat together, sharing memories of the father he had lost, of the days before separation, and of the life they had missed. Neighbors noticed the change too. The once quiet, invisible man became part of the community again, walking slowly with Aisha or sitting on the porch, greeting people with a small smile. The story of their reunion began to spread quietly, inspiring others to reach out to their own lost family members, to reconnect, to heal. One afternoon, Aisha found herself sitting beside her grandfather on the porch, watching the children play in the street. "Do you ever regret leaving?" she asked gently. He looked thoughtful. "Every day," he admitted. "I regret leaving my son, my family, my home. But I also believe that life gave me a chance to make things right, even if it took many years. And now I have you. I have your mother. I have hope." Aisha smiled. "It's never too late," she said softly. "We have the chance to be together now, to create memories, to share love." "Yes," he said, his eyes twinkling with gratitude. "And I intend to make every moment count." The days turned into weeks, and the old man became more comfortable with the life he had missed. He learned to cook a little, to tell stories to Aisha and her mother, and to enjoy the simple joys of home. Morning tea, the scent of fresh flowers, and the warmth of family around him. Aisha marveled at how quickly he adapted, how his spirit seemed to blossom after years of being closed off from the world. One evening, as they all sat together in the living room, her grandfather spoke softly. "I never thought I would live to see this day, to be part of my family again. I have learned that life is fragile, that pride and fear can keep people apart, and that love is the strongest force of all. I will never take a single moment with you for granted." Aisha held his hand gently. "We won't let you," she said. "We're together now, and that's what matters." Her mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "It's a miracle," she whispered. "A real miracle." From that day forward, the house was never quiet again. Laughter, stories, and shared meals became the rhythm of their days. The old man, who had once been alone and invisible, was now surrounded by love and care. And Aisha realized something profound, that a small act of kindness, the courage to reach out to someone in need, had changed all their lives forever. Years later, when people asked Aisha about her grandfather, she would tell them the story of the day she offered him water. She would explain how a simple gesture had led to the discovery of family, the healing of old wounds, and the creation of a new beginning. It became a story she shared often, not to boast, but to remind people that kindness could change lives in ways they could never imagine. And in the evenings, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the world grew quiet, Aisha would sometimes sit beside her grandfather on the porch. They would watch the sky turn gold and pink, and he would whisper softly, "Thank you, child, for bringing me home." Aisha would smile, squeezing his hand. "No, thank you," she would say, "for teaching us that love and family are stronger than time, distance, and pain." Together they had found each other again. Together they had begun to heal, and together they had discovered that it was never too late to find home. The house that had once been quiet and lonely now overflowed with life, laughter, and love. A simple act of water, a small gesture of kindness had brought the past and the present together, reuniting a family and giving them a second chance. And as they sat together each evening, the warmth of belonging wrapped around them like a gentle, unbreakable embrace, promising that the story of their love and connection would continue for many years to come.